Hey, it's Dave from the How to Podcast series. Jumping back on to say hello. And hey, it's the end of the year. Wanted to jump in and talk about some of the things I feel like have been going well for my podcast journey and be upfront and honest on some of the things that I could do better, because I know I can, and some of the things that are my focus for 2023. My encouragement to you, if you have something that you feel you did well in 2022, I'd love to hear about it. And if there's something that's challenging you for 2023, what can you do better? Again, I'd love to hear that as well. Head over to howtopodcastseries.ca, howtopodcastseries.ca, and you will find it takes you right to our homepage. And there you can leave us a voice message. You can interact with us there. And I'd love to hear from you. I've had Paolo, Rachel reach out, and a few others, and it's great to hear from listeners who are on the journey of starting their podcast. It's great to be part of that. So here we go. You ready? Some things we did well, some things we could do better. 2023 on the How to Podcast series. Here we go. So I did an experiment in December, and I created a new podcast. Did it for 25 days straight. It was called the Daily Santa Podcast, dailysantapodcast.com. And if you haven't heard it, I know Christmas is over here in North America and around the world. So if you haven't heard it and you want to smile, head over to dailysantapodcast.com and you can see we've done 25 episodes in 25 days. Now, the average podcaster starting out sometimes gives up after about 7 episodes. So to know up front that I have 25 episodes to complete in 25 days, that's a pretty big task. That's a big ask. That's a big commitment. And on day 1, we put it out there to the world that we would be doing this. And like that big ball, that big stone ball that chased Indiana Jones out of that scene, right, rolling in behind him and he's running for his life. I had this podcast rolling behind me every day for 25 days, December 1st all the way to December 25th, where I had to create a podcast, themed podcast, all unique, every day, start out with a blank screen, no script, and just a general idea. And we had some fun. So I'm going to put a little clip from that podcast in here just to share with you. We would do the whole podcast. It would be themed around being better humans. So it's geared towards children and families that they could listen to together. And every episode was focusing on being honest, being helpful, telling the truth, being a good community member, don't look down on people, make people feel small, like a lot of topics that would help everyone to stay on Santa's nice list. Now, whether you believe in Santa or not, the idea behind this was that all of us could get together and get behind something that could make us better people. And the idea was to get kids to buy into being the best kids possible over 25 days and see a change for them that they could carry into the new year. So that was the idea. So here's a little clip from the podcast to share with you so you can hear a little bit of it. And again, you can go over to dailysantapodcast.com. But here's a little taste just for you.
Welcome to the Daily Santa Podcast. This is your countdown to Christmas. We are so happy that you are here. Santa and his team will update you every day on all things Christmas. Visit dailysantapodcast.com for all the details. Subscribe and follow with your parents' help so that you don't miss a single day. Stay on the good list with great tips from Santa and more, right here on the Daily Santa Podcast.
I'm Sophie. I am Santa's elf in charge of all things social media. Welcome to the podcast. Yay!
The Daily Santa Podcast is a daily podcast starting on December 1st. A daily episode will bring you news from the North Pole, updates from the toy shop. Santa will answer your questions. Selfie, Santa's social media elf.
Wait a minute. My name Miss Selfie. I think he's talking about me.
Selfie, we'll share fun stories about Santa. Santa has a special challenge every day for you on how you can stay on the good list. This is a podcast for kids, but your parents could listen too. The Daily Santa Podcast starts December 1st. Visit dailysantapodcast.com for more. My name is Twinkle, the voiceover guy. The Daily Santa Podcast will be a lot of fun. Merry Christmas to you. Subscribe today.
Merry Christmas.
So that was a little taste of the Daily Santa Podcast. Now, each episode was around 12 minutes to about 20 minutes, roughly. Each episode was recorded the day before, the day it was released. Each episode, again mentioned earlier, started with a blank screen, a blank script, and a big idea for the day. Each episode took 4 to 5 hours to create. 25 days in a row. So whether I was feeling well or not, one of those days I actually had come back from the dentist after having a tooth removed. After 2 hours in the chair at the dentist office, I came home and did the next day's podcast. So whether or not I felt like I had to do, I just felt like I had to do it because I made a commitment. I went through with it and the days flew by, to be honest, from December 1st to the 25th. It was a blink. And we came away with some really great podcast episodes. All of the voices you hear in that podcast are either me through an app on my phone, changing my voice. So producer Dave and Selfie, Santa's social media elf, that's me on my phone recording myself and then emailing it to myself. And then everybody else is an AI voice, text to speech, where you just type in whatever you want and they say it back to you in different voices. So I had my whole community of characters created and I had to voice them all, create all the content, and get everything done in about a 4 to 5 hour window while still working full-time nights, while still doing other podcasts, interviews, everything else at the same time. So it was a very busy December. Let's put it that way. Really enjoyed it though. But that was one of the big things that I did at the end of the year that I felt went really well. Because again, I haven't done a daily podcast yet. And this was my 7th podcast in addition to the 6 that I already have running. So yes, some of my podcasts in December took a back seat to make room for a 4 to 5 hour podcast recording every day and the editing and everything else, all the social media, the website. I did it all, right? So yes, some of my episodes did take a back seat and that I'm going to catch up on for sure, including this. Thankfully, I had a lot of episodes for this podcast pre-recorded, set to go live, so I could leave this one and kind of go. But I felt like I wanted to connect with you at the end of the year just to make that connection as well. So that's one of the things I felt I really did well. Now let's change gears here to maybe some of the things that I need to refocus on, do a better job of in 2023. And I don't know if you are a podcast host and you do interviews, but maybe you've run into this. I create the podcast, I record the podcast with my guest, I get it all done, send it out. Again, my process, I get it to YouTube within a day or two of recording. It's just static image, just a still image picture, nothing moving, and then the audio track attached to that. I put it on YouTube. And although some people don't like that, I treat YouTube, I've mentioned this before, I treat YouTube like a storage drive, like a Google Drive, where my podcast lives for free. And also Google does a translation and of my podcast, a transcript for free, which then I can edit and play with if I want to do transcripts. Anyways, it's a free place to host my finished podcast episode, and my guest gets access to it immediately after their interview. Because for Living the Next Chapter podcast, for example, I have a backlog of completed episodes, and my podcast host gives me a limit every month of how many I can upload. So I'm stuck with this hard stop limit, and I have more pre-recorded completed episodes than I have room for every month. So I'm stuck. And instead of telling my guests to wait 3 to 4 months to hear their episode, I use YouTube as a back way to get my listeners access to podcasts that are more recent. For those that have caught up or want to listen ahead, head over to YouTube and you can do that. And I'll link in the show notes if you want to check that out and how I do that. So again, I used to use YouTube as a resource. If no one listens to a single episode of my YouTube version of my podcast, I'm okay with that. Honestly, completely fine with that. And that might make your head spin, but I'm not out there to grow an audience on YouTube. I'm using it as a backup drive. So consider that. Don't stress out about people who tell you never put a static image, a picture with a MP3 attached to it. Never ever do that on YouTube. You know what? If it works for you and it helps you, go ahead. Ignore that because those people are YouTube focused. And yes, YouTube is a video platform. Yes, I get it. And when I have time to release the video footage of my podcast, I will do so for sure, 100%. But I just use it as a backup drive. So, but I get all that stuff done. And then when I'm allowed to, I upload my audio tracks to all my players that go out to the world, my Amazons, my Apple, my Spotify, and it goes out to everybody. But then what I'm not doing a good job of is reconnecting with my guests, telling them that their episode is live, creating social media assets for them, whether it's an Instagram post about their episode, a Facebook post, whatever. And I'm not sending out an email back to them in a timely fashion to thank them and to give them the assets and give them the information. Some of my more passionate guests will reach out to me and say, hey, Dave, where's my episode? When can I promote you? I love that. Thank you, by the way, for doing that. So what I'm trying to do over the holiday season before we move into 2023 is I'm going to go back and take video clips from their episode of just my guests, not me, just my guests talking about their topic or a key moment in their interview, making a short, bite-sized Instagram post, not an audiogram where it's just some moving thing on the screen. And I'm not a big fan. I'd rather see a video where you can see them talking and see the passion and see them speaking about their topic, their book, whatever. So I'm going to create these little short snippets and tag my guests in those as a recap of 2022 and just a way of saying, hey, thank you for being a part of the podcast. And I'm going to use the transition between 2022 and 2023 as a way of reaching out to my guests, which I should have done earlier, which I should have done closer to the release of their episode. Yes, I completely agree with you. But instead of not doing anything, I'm going to use this holiday changeover time to make that connection with my guests again. And it gives me a chance to say thank you. It gives me a chance to bring life back to an older episode, maybe from January of 2022. I can still highlight it's evergreen. The content's great. My guests are amazing. So I get to put a spotlight on them again, even at the end of the year. So that's a great suggestion for you guys if you do have something that you can point your audience back to, your community to, and highlight your guests. So for me, 2023, I'm really going to focus in on streamlining the end of my process. I feel like I'm getting really adept to the beginning and middle part of my process, and that's running pretty smooth. But I think I could do better on the end of the process, whether that's guest relations. But then as well, one last thing would be just how I stay in touch with my guests. And what do I do with 200-300 emails from past guests, communication? Now that I have this great contacts of people I've worked with and done episodes with, what do I do with their contact information? Do I have them back again? Or, because I have new people coming all the time, I'm kind of in this boat where I don't know what to do with all these great contacts that I have. So I want to stay in touch with them, build community, whether that's a Facebook group or something. But I really want to focus in on my past guests and honor their commitment and their time to spend time with me on my podcast. So there you go. That's what I'm happy with. I'm really happy with the Daily Santa podcast. Thank you for checking that out, by the way. And if you can, share that with your family and friends, even though it's past the Christmas date. The lessons and the topics I think are really helpful. There's a lot of fun in there too. And I would love if you share that with me. I would really appreciate that. And I guess on top of everything, just identify for yourself, what did you do well in 2023 or 2022? And what can you do better in the new year? I think that's one thing that I think everyone that is starting out in podcasting, whether you have one episode, you have 25 episodes in a row, whatever that is, what have you done well and what can you do better? Because I think if we can all improve by a small amount every day, every month, every year, as you look back in your catalog, you're going to see the growth and you're going to see your audience growth, your guest growth. You personally are going to grow. And in all of that, I think you're going to end up seeing more confidence and a better ability to reach and build community with your podcast. If I can help you with your podcast, our umbrella over all seven of our podcasts is truemediasolutions.ca, a link in the show notes. But I would love to help you start a podcast, whether you just need somebody to bounce some questions off of. I tell everybody, first call is always free. And if it's 5 minutes, if it's an hour, how can I help you get over the hurdle of starting a podcast? Because there's only one you in the entire world. No one else has lived the life you have lived. No one else sees the world the way you do. And no one can reach an audience that you can. I've sent people to other podcasters that I admire for their content, and they've come back to me and said, Dave, thanks for the recommendation. I tried that other podcaster, but they were rude, or I didn't like how they talked down to people, or I didn't like that they talked about microphones more than they talked about content. They were way too in the weeds, and I just couldn't find any value in what they're talking about. So, Dave, I'd rather come back to you and work with you. And if you want to bring in information from that other podcaster to help me, great, but I'd rather get it from you because you're you and you're different from them. You know, I've listened to some podcasters and they put down people who aren't like them, for example. And I don't understand how you can do that. One podcaster I really enjoy was recently lamenting that even though he's trying to help people start podcasting, he never really engages with people who are at the beginning stages. He's surrounded by people who are well into the game of podcasting, and he's almost forgotten what it's like to be a new podcaster. I haven't forgotten, and I haven't forgotten about you. And if I can help you in any way, I really would like to do that. And I come to you with compassion and willingness to help and serve you. And like I said, I'm just building all of this. So it's a great time to connect and to do podcasting together. I do promise you, I will support you. I will promote you. I think you've heard back in some of my past episodes when people reach out to me, I celebrate that. And I even create an episode just for that person. So if that gives you any sense of what it's like to work with me, I would love if you go back through truemediasolutions.ca, check out all 7 of the podcasts that are active for me right now. And you'll see all my artwork. You'll see my website. You'll see and hear my YouTube and my audio podcasts. If any of that catches your attention and you're like, I kind of want some of that, reach out and let's have a conversation. And if I can encourage you in any way, I would love to do that. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to make you buy a certain microphone or use a certain hosting site. I'm not paid by any of these people to tell you these things. So if you want some unbiased advice from somebody who's actively doing 7 podcasts, I'm here for you. And I'd love to help you because your message is yours. I can't do your podcast. You can't do my podcast because we are who we are. and we bring something different that no one else can. So I want to help you celebrate your podcast and what you can do. So the How to Podcast series will be back in 2023 with more co-hosted podcasts. I have some great people coming on to talk about a wide variety of things to do with podcasting. I'm still going to be doing my shorter episodes with you like this. And again, if I can help you, please reach out. All the best to you as we jump from 2022 to 2023. I'm here for you, and I'd love to help you. So I hope you hear it in my voice because I really mean it, and I'd love to be a part of your journey. If I can help you in any way, truemediasolutions.ca. Again, everything that we're talking about is in the show notes, and that'll be in your phone with a swipe or a click or something. You'll be able to see everything that we talked about. So thank you. Enjoy your holiday season wherever you are in the world, and we have people listening around the world. All the best to you, your family, safety, health, happiness, everything for you and your family this year. And I can't wait to hear your podcast and be a part of your journey to get your voice out to the world. You already have a fan. I'm right here. My hand is raised. I'm ready to hear your story. Let's get it going in 2023. All the best. Thanks.